Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're stepping into a space that feels quite profound, actually. We want to acknowledge those invisible burdens, the ones so many of us carry. The quiet battles people fight, often shaped by expectation, by tradition. And, well, the deeply personal cost of trying, constantly trying, to hold everything together. This isn't just recounting a story, it's really an exploration of resilience, but a resilience forged under, well, immense pressure. We're about to explore a narrative that kind of asks us to consider something important, that maybe, just maybe, the greatest strength isn't always found in perpetually trying to keep a crumbling structure standing. Sometimes, perhaps, it's in recognizing when the system has finally, inevitably, collapsed, and then finding the courage to start rebuilding. It's a journey into the heart of sacrifice, endurance, and those really daunting first steps towards maybe a different kind of freedom. So our mission today is to dive into the really compelling insights shared by Vanina Vergara. Her piece is called The Price of Holding It All Together, and it's deeply moving. We'll be tracing a journey that I suspect many might recognize in some way. A life shaped by these deeply ingrained beliefs, by relentless self-sacrifice, and the ultimate, often hidden, cost of living for others, sometimes completely at your own expense. We really want to understand the formative experiences that set this path, the eventual, maybe unavoidable, unraveling, and that powerful moment of deciding to rebuild. Vanina begins her story with an introduction. On the surface, it seems quite simple, but it holds this quiet weight. It really hints at the profound experiences she's about to share. She states, and I'll read this directly, I am Vanina Vergara, CV Vergara to the English-speaking world, born in Asunción, Paraguay. I have 3 children whom I love deeply, and this is my life. Okay, so what immediately jumps out at me from this is that sense of identity. It seems so deeply intertwined with your children, obviously, but also that last phrase, this is my life. It feels like a statement of fact, but maybe one imbued with the whole history we're just about to uncover. It makes me immediately curious about the foundations, the ones this life was built on, especially when it's anchored in love, clearly, but perhaps also deeply in sacrifice and endurance. It makes you wonder how those foundations, even if they seem strong, might eventually just crumble under the strain.
Absolutely. That simple statement carries so much potential weight. It sets a certain tone right from the start.
Oh yeah, it really does. So let's talk about adolescence. We often think of it as this, vibrant time of self-discovery, maybe burgeoning freedom, first crushes, late-night talks, just figuring things out.
Right, the typical picture.
But for some individuals, like Vanina, this crucial developmental stage marks something very different. A stark and profoundly premature entry into heavy adult responsibilities. It's a really heart-wrenching twist, isn't it? Fundamentally altering what youth is supposed to be about, replacing that carefree exploration with the sheer gravity of caregiving.
It's a phenomenon often called parentification. The child essentially takes on the parental role.
Exactly. Vanina explicitly describes her own adolescence not as a fresh breeze of freedom, which is such a lovely image, but rather as a forced relocation into the role of adulthood. Can you just imagine that contrast? While her peers might be dreaming of a first kiss or an evening at the cinema, her reality was completely different. Her world wasn't about innocent exploration. It was defined by extinguishing emotional fires at home. And we're not talking about typical teenage angst here, are we?
No, not at all. This sounds much deeper, much more challenging.
It was about navigating a profoundly difficult, emotionally volatile home environment.
And the impact of that, starting so young, is just immense. It sets patterns.
It really does. Her role, she says, solidified quickly, almost instinctively. She became the caregiving daughter, always on call, supporting a broken mother, drying her tears, and silently listening to these laments about an emotionally absent father, at times absent in body as well. It paints such a vivid and quite sorrowful picture, doesn't it?
It really does. A child thrust into that role.
Bearing the weight, absorbing the emotional fallout of her parents' struggles, she tells us she had already mastered the art of reading silences and veiled outbursts. Just think about the sheer level of hypervigilance required for a child to develop that skill.
It's exhausting. Constant scanning, constant tension.
Yeah, it's not a skill born of carefree play. It comes from this desperate, almost primal need to anticipate trouble, manage conflict.
To maintain some semblance of stability, however precarious.
Exactly.
Building on that, what immediately strikes me is, as you said, this profound experience of parentification. It isn't just about chores, it's the emotional labor.
Right.
The child assumes responsibilities typically reserved for adults. This kind of role reversal forces a premature development of emotional intelligence, yes, but it's forced into stress. It's not really for personal growth in the healthy sense. It's for survival.
Survival, yeah.
And for the maintenance, however fragile, of the family unit. It speaks to a deep, often silent, sacrifice of her own developmental needs, her own childhood experiences, for the perceived stability of others. And this kind of experience, sadly, it's not uncommon. It creates a blueprint, really, for a life where your own needs are perpetually secondary.
That phrase, reading silences and veiled outbursts, what does that actually entail psychologically?
Well, we're really touching on the concept of hypervigilance there. It often comes from an insecure attachment environment. This isn't just being observant, it's an exhausting, constant state of anticipating conflict or distress. The child learns to constantly monitor the emotional landscape, trying to interpret the unspoken, the subtle shifts in mood, rather than experiencing genuine, open, secure connection.
Right.
This state of perpetual emotional alert, even when there's no immediate danger, it becomes an ingrained way of interacting with the world. It's a heavy, isolating burden for a child. It makes true relaxation or authentic self-expression incredibly difficult because they're always sort of bracing themselves.
Always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. Bracing for the next emotional fire, as she put it.
And the lessons she internalized from this period, they were stark, weren't they? Absolutely.
Yeah, she says, one had to hold everything up, one had to be strong, one had to keep quiet. These weren't just suggestions, as you said earlier. They become foundational tenets.
Like commandments.
Exactly. Etched into her young mind, forming the bedrock of her approach to life, to relationships, to everything. They become her operating manual for navigating a complex and often painful world.
And if we zoom out a bit, how do these early experiences typically shape future relationships?
Well, they often become the fundamental blueprint, the unconscious script. The lessons of hold everything up, be strong, and keep quiet aren't just for that specific family context. They become deeply internalized commands.
They shape not only her interactions within the family, but extend to her entire existence. Her sense of self-worth, her understanding of her place in the world. They become the unwritten rules by which she lives, often without any conscious awareness of just how profound their influence is.
Wow. So how many of us, perhaps subtly, learned similar lessons in our formative years? What silent burdens did you carry or maybe witness that shaped your own understanding of responsibility and self-sacrifice? It's something to reflect on.
Definitely. Those early patterns are incredibly powerful.
It's just truly poignant, isn't it? To consider that image of a young girl tasked with extinguishing emotional fires when she should have been experiencing teenage joys. Instead of dreaming about a first kiss, her nights are filled with the heavy reality of her mother's tears, her laments. This forced emotional labor, this lack of a safe space to just be a child, to have her own needs met, it creates such profound emotional isolation.
She's listening in silence, bearing the weight of adult problems without an outlet, without a voice.
And without anyone caring for her own developing self. That's the crux of it.
And this foundation, this silent endurance, this emotional responsibility, it wasn't just a personal experience, right? It seems like it was amplified, reinforced by the cultural, the societal expectations around her.
Absolutely. It's rarely just a family in isolation.
It's like society itself echoed those early lessons, further solidifying these painful ideas into her identity.
Yes, beyond the immediate family, society often provides a powerful and frequently prescriptive narrative, especially for women, about who we should be.
Right.
Vanina's story highlights how deeply these societal narratives can intertwine with personal experience. They act like this strong current, pulling us in certain directions, often away from our authentic selves.
And this cultural context can legitimize, even reinforce those coping mechanisms developed in childhood.
Making them feel like virtuous choices, rather than necessary adaptations to difficult circumstances.
She mentions being raised beneath the watchful eye of traditional Catholicism, and that within her environment, this taught her that sacrifice was virtue.
A very common teaching.
This isn't just a religious idea, though, is it? It becomes this profound cultural lens.
A way to view your life, define your worth.
And within this framework, she says the duty of a good woman was explicitly defined in terms of, well, profound self-negation. To endure, to yield, to forgive, and if need be, to erase herself entirely.
Erase herself entirely. That phrase is just devastating.
It really is. It demands an almost complete dissolution of self for the sake of perceived goodness, or piety, or respectability.
It's a blueprint for a life lived entirely in service to others, with almost no room for individual expression or well-being.
And crucially, she notes with such heartbreaking clarity, No one ever spoke to me of boundaries, of mental health, of self-love.
Essential tools, completely absent.
Yeah, tools for self-preservation, for well-being, just not part of the conversation. Instead, the focus was rigidly on external compliance, on reputation, only of what must and must not be done in order to remain a decent woman.
This leaves absolutely no room for internal emotional processing, for personal needs, for an authentic sense of self.
It's all about maintaining that outward image, that facade, regardless of the internal cost.
Her cost being immense.
And then came, as she puts it, the years of the catwalk. A world that, from the outside, looks glamorous, successful, maybe even empowering.
Right. Model, television appearances, public visibility.
Yet, for Vanina, it was just another stage, another performance of a predetermined role. It was a world of the rehearsed smile, an image that reflected what others expected of me. So despite the external validation, the applause, maybe admiration, she always felt as though I were playing a part in a script written by someone else. Pretty, proper, compliant.
So the external success felt hollow.
Completely. It wasn't aligned with her true self. It was just another version of the same old pattern, conforming, enduring.
And the internal reality. That's where the truth lies.
Yeah, she bravely reveals that stark contrast. Inside, I continued to carry a dense sadness, that mixture of fear and obligation that takes root when you believe you cannot fail, for if you fall, everything collapses.
Wow, that dense sadness.
It's this constant, unwelcome companion to her public persona.
And the fear of failure isn't just about making a mistake.
No, it's existential. It's this dread that if her carefully constructed image,
Or her ability to hold everything up for everyone else.
if that faltered, her entire world, everything she knew, would just crumble.
That's an incredible amount of pressure to live under.
What strikes you most about this synergy between the family dynamics and the cultural messages?
Well, it's the powerful reinforcement, really. The traditional teachings on sacrifice, on self-erasure, learned in her youth, they essentially become a societal mandate.
Right, they get validated externally.
Exactly. Culture reinforces and legitimizes the very coping mechanisms she developed as a child. It creates an almost inescapable framework for her identity. Self-sacrifice isn't just an instinctual response to family need anymore. It's celebrated as a cardinal virtue.
Which makes it incredibly difficult to question or deviate from.
Precisely. It provides a moral justification for neglecting her own needs, effectively cementing her role as the perpetual caregiver, the self-effacer.
And the impact of never learning about boundaries, mental health, self-love. You called it a deprivation.
I think it is. From a psychological perspective, these are foundational pillars for a healthy sense of self, for functional relationships. Without them, an individual is left utterly unprepared, unequipped.
To advocate for themselves.
Yes, or even to recognize emotional harm when it's happening, or to establish necessary protective barriers in relationships. Without these concepts, the path to self-erasure becomes not just permissible, but expected, even lauded.
It's like sending someone out without a map or compass.
And then judging them for getting lost. Exactly.
So how does performing this pretty proper compliant role amplify the internal dense sadness?
It creates this profound cognitive dissonance, doesn't it? You have the external persona, the rehearsed smile, living in stark contrast to the internal reality of pain, of suppression. Right. It's not just feeling sad, it's the enormous energy expended every single day to maintain that flawless exterior, to hide the pain from the world.
That must be exhausting. Incredibly draining. The pressure to conform, to present an image reflecting others' expectations, creates this constant psychological burden. And that fear of failure becomes existential, as you said. If the image breaks, if the performance falters,
The whole structure collapses.
yes, the entire perceived structure of her life, built on these fragile foundations of external validation and self-suppression, it collapses. It's a terrifying prospect. It leaves her trapped between an unsustainable facade and this unacknowledged inner turmoil.
That phrase, erase herself entirely,
Yeah.
it really is chilling.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just being quiet or accommodating.
It does.
In daily life, it looks like a complete suppression of your own desires, opinions, authentic emotional reactions.
To the point where your identity becomes almost indistinguishable from the roles assigned to you.
It means never saying no, always agreeing, never asserting, always yielding,
It's a profound, slow form of self-abandonment.
where the person you truly are just slowly disappears.
And it's particularly heartbreaking when you juxtapose it with the glamorous catwalk world, presenting this polished, confident image, all while carrying that heavy, dense sadness inside.
The contrast is stark, deeply sorrowful. It speaks volumes about the internal world she was navigating.
So these deep-seated beliefs, reinforced by family, by culture, are profoundly painful. They weren't just abstract ideas, they became like the operating system for her most intimate relationships.
Yes, that's where the patterns often play out most intensely.
Which led her down a familiar and ultimately just heartbreaking path, where the lessons learned in childhood tragically repeated themselves.
This next part of her story really brings the weight of those early lessons home.
Yes, this is where the devastating impact becomes so evident, how these patterns played out in the most personal, vulnerable parts of her life. There's a significant sadness here as we explore the direct consequences of these deeply ingrained beliefs. It shows how past wounds, if they're left unaddressed, can unconsciously dictate our future choices.
Leading us right back into situations we desperately wanted to avoid.
It's such a poignant illustration of how our earliest blueprints for connection can set the stage for these cycles of repetition.
And she articulates this so clearly.
She really does. Vanina shares this profoundly impactful insight. It's an articulation of the core belief system that shaped her intimate connections. I want to read it directly because it just lays bare so much of what we've been discussing. It's quite long, but every part is crucial. She writes, "My first relationships bore the very same pattern. I adapted, I molded myself, I justified, and when it hurt, I endured. Because that was what I had been taught. That love was surrender, even when it wounds. That a respectable woman knows how to suffer in silence. That if a man is angered, it must be because you have erred, and that a family must be defended, even at the expense of one's own sanity."
Wow. Just hearing it read like that, it's a chilling roadmap, isn't it, of how these ingrained patterns manifest. When she says, "My first relationships bore the very same pattern. I adapted, I molded myself, I justified, and when it hurt, I endured." She's describing a classic cycle of, well, learned helplessness and self-effacement. She's actively recounting how her own identity, her well-being, were constantly being adjusted to fit external demands. And that phrase, "when it hurt, I endured," is particularly potent.
It really is.
It illustrates a normalization of pain within the relationship dynamic. Instead of seeing pain as a crucial signal.
Like an alarm bell.
Exactly, a signal to establish boundaries, seek help, maybe disengage. She just endured. It highlights this tragic acceptance of suffering as an inherent part of love.
A continuation of that caregiving daughter role.
Precisely. But now in an intimate partnership, it's a testament to how powerful those early lessons were and how incredibly difficult it is to break free from what feels familiar, even when it's deeply harmful.
And the justification, because that was what I had been taught. That love was surrender even when it wounds. That specific part.
That's a profound statement about the nature of sometimes what we call trauma bonding. It isn't just her observing her own behavior, it's a direct attribution to a learned belief system.
Right.
Where love, true love, inherently involves pain and self-sacrifice. This redefines love into something transactional and profoundly harmful.
Where your own well-being is secondary.
Completely secondary to the act of surrender. It sets this deeply damaging precedent for tolerating harm under the guise of devotion. Imagine how insidious it is to be taught that the deepest connection you can have is one that causes you pain, requires you to diminish yourself.
It's unthinkable, really.
And it raises that important question again. What kind of society, what kind of cultural narratives teach such a definition of love, especially to young women, effectively training them to accept mistreatment, to see their own suffering almost as a badge of honor?
And to rationalize harmful dynamics as just acts of love.
It's a societal script, often patriarchal in origin, that perpetuates immense personal suffering.
It's just devastating to be taught that love itself is supposed to hurt. And this leads directly to the next expectation she mentions, that a respectable woman knows how to suffer in silence.
In the silence.
This connects so deeply to that keep quiet lesson from her childhood, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's about denying your own pain for the sake of appearance, for maintaining a facade of strength or respectability.
It's a devastating form of emotional isolation. You're not only enduring pain, but you're forbidden from seeking solace or expressing it.
It internalizes the suffering, makes it an entirely solitary burden.
And it actively prevents any outside intervention or support, ensuring the cycle of silent suffering just continues.
It makes visible suffering seem like a weakness, or worse, a moral failing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Weakness or indecency.
Okay, so that silence, what does it actually do in the dynamic?
Well, this silence is a profound form of self-erasure. And it's a cornerstone of control in unhealthy relationships. It prevents healing. It isolates the individual in their pain. And crucially, it perpetuates any harmful dynamics by rendering them invisible to the outside world.
Right, if no one knows.
If suffering is kept secret, it cannot be addressed. And the person causing the harm faces no accountability. It ties directly into that decent woman narrative, implying that visible suffering, visible distress, or complaint makes one indecent or unrespectable, which reinforces the immense pressure to suppress your truth and endure in isolation.
It creates this perverse incentive to just suffer alone, to protect an image at the expense of your own safety.
Your fundamental right to emotional safety, yes.
And this next point, it feels incredibly heavy. A real hallmark of manipulative relationships. That if a man is angered, it must be because you have erred.
The blame shift.
It places the entire burden of blame, all the responsibility onto the woman. It absolves the man completely.
It's a form of emotional gaslighting. Her perception of reality is constantly undermined.
It denies her agency. Creates this constant state of self-blame,
where she's perpetually examining her own behavior for faults,
which just erodes any sense of personal worth or autonomy.
It fosters this destructive feedback loop. Any negative emotion from her partner gets internalized as her personal failing,
leaving no room for healthy disagreement or mutual responsibility.
None at all.
How common is that specific tactic?
Extremely common, unfortunately. This is a classic manipulative tactic often found in unhealthy and abusive dynamics, where external anger is weaponized and then internalized as a personal failing by the victim. It systematically erodes self-worth and critical judgment. It makes it almost impossible for the individual to discern actual fault.
Or to stand up for themselves.
Exactly, or to establish healthy boundaries. It fosters a pervasive sense of guilt, regardless of actual responsibility,
making the individual highly vulnerable to further manipulation and control.
It's a cornerstone of emotional abuse, often cleverly disguised as a moral lesson.
Creating an environment where the victim is constantly walking on eggshells, terrified of causing a perceived transgression. And finally, the culmination, the ultimate sacrifice she was taught to make. And that a family must be defended, even at the expense of one's own sanity.
Wow.
This is the holding everything up taken to its most extreme, most tragic conclusion.
Where self-preservation, mental, emotional well-being, they're all secondary.
Secondary to this imposed duty to maintain the idea of a family unit.
Even when that unit is deeply dysfunctional, abusive, harmful.
It's a command to sacrifice yourself entirely on the altar of this perceived family ideal.
Even when that ideal is causing immense damage.
The cost is just unimaginable. Risking not just happiness, but your very grasp on reality, your sanity.
This specific point really speaks to the phenomena of enmeshed family systems, where boundaries between individuals are blurred and one person's distress is felt as another's responsibility to fix or endure. It implies that the appearance of a functional family or relationship unit outweighs the internal reality of suffering and distress.
The facade is everything.
Yes. It places an immense, unsustainable pressure, particularly on women, to maintain that facade, to keep up appearances regardless of the internal cost. This leads to immense psychological distress, chronic anxiety, depression,
and ultimately
a breakdown of the self. The cost is astronomical, literally risking one's sanity for an ideal that is already shattered internally. It's not just a sacrifice, it's a slow, deliberate self-destruction for a cause that offers no true reward or stability, just a deeper descent into the abyss of self-loss.
How do these deeply ingrained societal or family beliefs resonate with your own experiences or observations? Maybe you've seen the cost of these lessons playing out in lives around you, or perhaps even reflected in your own past. Recognizing these patterns is often the first and incredibly difficult step towards breaking them.
It really is. Awareness is key.
Considering the detailed breakdown of the quote, there's just such a profound sadness, isn't there? Realizing that your deepest desires for love, for connection, were built on such fragile, self-sacrificing ground.
It must be incredibly painful. Recognizing how a lifetime of lessons intended to guide ultimately led to deep wounds, loss of self.
And this analysis reveals not just Vanina's personal experience, but a broader societal pattern.
Yes, tragically, it traps far too many individuals, particularly women, in these cycles of self-negation and enduring harm.
It's a testament to the powerful, often invisible forces that shape our lives and define our understanding of love and duty.
And these deeply held beliefs, these profoundly painful patterns, they simply weren't sustainable.
No. The human spirit, the body, It can only endure so much before the system just inevitably collapses under the immense accumulated weight of silent suffering and ceaseless self-sacrifice.
There's a limit, a biological and psychological limit to how long anyone can operate against their own well-being.
So the quiet suffering, the constant adaptation, the unyielding endurance, it all comes at a price. Eventually the body, which is often our most honest messenger, right?
It doesn't lie.
It begins to send its own undeniable signals, leading to a point of no return where the internal struggle just can't be contained anymore.
It's like a physiological uprising against an unsustainable way of living.
Vanina describes how her body began to exact its toll. And this wasn't abstract emotional pain anymore. It manifested physically, debilitating symptoms, anxiety, insomnia, nameless anguish.
These aren't minor discomforts, they're profound indicators of a system under immense stress, a body screaming for help.
Anxiety, that persistent unease. Insomnia, inability to find rest. And nameless anguish, that speaks to a pain so deep, so pervasive, it doesn't even have a clear trigger anymore, just a constant, overwhelming presence. Yet, despite these clear, desperate warnings from her own body, she tells us she carried on functioning as any dutiful, caregiving daughter would.
The conditioning, it's so powerful.
It overrode her body's own pleas for relief, showcasing the extraordinary yet ultimately self-destructive power of those internalized lessons.
Until it couldn't anymore.
Exactly. Until one day, the entire system collapsed. Such a stark, unavoidable conclusion to a life lived under that kind of pressure.
It signifies a complete breakdown. Not just mental and physical health, but the very framework that had defined her existence.
It's the ultimate protest of a self that can no longer be ignored or suppressed.
And adding to this personal crisis was the situation with her marriage.
Right, her marriage to the father of her children, which she had entered into as a desperate attempt to build the home I had never known.
So much hope invested in it.
Yeah, and it ultimately devolved into a brutal repetition of what I had sworn never to live again.
Oh, that's particularly heartbreaking.
Isn't it? The hope for a different future, for stability, for love, tragically subsumed by the very patterns she tried to escape.
It speaks to the insidious power of unresolved trauma, those ingrained patterns.
How they can unconsciously draw us back into familiar, painful dynamics unless we actively work to dismantle them.
With intention, with support. The past really does have a way of repeating itself, especially when its lessons aren't fully acknowledged or processed.
And so she found herself at what she calls point zero. Divorced, stigmatized, with 3 children living with him.
A devastating situation, compounded by intense societal judgment.
Yes. That question hanging heavy in the air, that cruel accusation so many women face. A good mother does not leave her children, does she?
That rhetorical question, delivered with the sting of social condemnation, it highlights the profound double standard.
The lack of empathy often directed at women in these situations.
It's a judgment that completely ignores the underlying complexities.
And forces the victim to carry not only the burden of their trauma, but also the weight of societal disapproval.
And the reality behind that judgment was hidden.
Completely hidden, Vanina bravely reveals. No one spoke of the violence behind it all, of the manipulations of the domestic hell.
Instead, the complex truth of her suffering was ignored, minimized, maybe outright denied.
She was simply labeled, demonized by a society unwilling to confront uncomfortable truths.
The mad one, the unstable one, the irresponsible one. That was me.
This complete inversion of reality, this blaming of the victim.
It's a tragic consequence of a society that often prefers simple narratives, convenient labels.
Over-grappling with uncomfortable truths about abuse and the immense courage it takes to escape it.
It's a profound injustice that isolates victims further right when they need support the most.
What stands out for you in this phase of unraveling?
Well, it's that progression. From the internalized emotional suffering to the overt, undeniable physical symptoms, that nameless anguish is so telling. A deep distress rooted in the fabric of her being. And even with these alarms, the conditioning to function as the dutiful caregiving daughter persists. It demonstrates the immense, almost unbreakable power of those early lessons and societal expectations.
It shows how deeply embedded these patterns were, requiring a complete systemic collapse to finally break free.
Yes. And the marriage becoming that brutal repetition, it underscores the insidious nature of unresolved patterns. It highlights a critical psychological point. without deep self-awareness, without consciously identifying and dismantling those ingrained beliefs about self-sacrifice.
Without boundaries.
And without establishing clear boundaries, we often unwittingly recreate the very dynamics we sought to escape. It's a common phenomenon. The past echoes powerfully if not addressed directly.
And the societal reaction, the stigma.
That reveals the profound double bind many women face. When they finally break free from the unhealthy, even violent situation, they're often not met with support. They're punished by society.
Right, that question, a good mother does not leave her children, does she?
It powerfully illustrates the deeply ingrained, often misogynistic judgments.
Judgments that ignore the underlying violence, manipulations, domestic hell.
And instead, blame the one who dared to break the silence, to seek self-preservation. This societal response, rooted in victim blaming and traditional gender roles, can be as damaging as the abuse itself. It isolates victims further, hinders their recovery.
It reinforces the very silence that perpetuates the abuse in the first place.
Exactly.
Think about the immense courage it takes to reach a breaking point like that, especially when it means facing not only personal devastation, but also intense societal disapproval, judgment. How often do we, as a society, ignore the unseen violence, manipulation, preferring to label and blame the victim rather than understanding the complex realities of their struggle?
It's a question that invites deep and often uncomfortable introspection about our own biases.
That phrase, brutal repetition, it just conveys such a crushing weight, doesn't it?
History repeating itself, trapping her in a cycle she desperately tried to avoid.
It's a feeling of utter powerlessness. Seeing your deepest hopes turn into the very nightmare you fled.
And the contrast between hidden domestic hell, the private violence and manipulation, and the public accusations of being mad or irresponsible.
It's a painful illustration of how society often silences and demonizes victims,
ignoring their truth in favor of convenient, often cruel, labels.
It's a profound injustice that compounds the trauma.
But the seemingly insurmountable darkness, this dark abyss, it also marked a turning point.
Yes, the beginning of a profound shift. A journey not of enduring in silence anymore, but of actively rebuilding. It's really a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
Even at the lowest point, when everything seems irrevocably lost.
When you find yourself truly at point zero, stripped of everything you thought defined you, there can be a glimmer of hope, a spark of resilience that ignites a new path forward.
It's a moment where the only way to go is up.
Where the only option is to turn inward and discover an untapped wellspring of strength that was perhaps always there, just buried.
Buried under layers of expectation and sacrifice.
Vanina captures this pivotal, almost sacred moment with such powerful brevity, she says. And there, in that dark abyss, another journey began. The journey of rebuilding myself.
That single sentence, following such despair and collapse, is incredibly powerful.
It signifies a profound shift, doesn't it? From being a victim of circumstance and conditioning
to becoming the conscious architect of her own future.
It's the moment of reclaiming agency, even when the path ahead is entirely unknown.
And it raises that important question. What does it truly mean to begin rebuilding after such a complete, devastating collapse? Especially when you've been so thoroughly defined by external roles, by others' expectations, by the absence of self-love and boundaries.
What does it involve?
From a therapeutic perspective, it involves a radical act of self-discovery, relearning who you are when you're no longer performing a role for others. It speaks to an incredible inner strength, a radical refusal to remain defined by external judgment or past pain.
Even when the future is uncertain, the path unclear.
Yes. It's a testament to the human spirit's capacity for renewal, for finding a new sense of purpose, a new identity, even when everything seems lost. It's not just recovery, it's a profound recreation of self.
And while her text doesn't detail the rebuilding process itself,
the mere mention of its beginning is incredibly powerful. It signifies that reclaiming of self, that fundamental shift from enduring for others to consciously constructing a life for oneself.
A life on her own terms.
Exactly. It's the first breath of autonomy, the first conscious decision to prioritize her own well-being and identity, even in the face of immense societal pressure and personal devastation.
It marks the start of a new chapter, where her own voice, her own needs begin to take precedence.
Moving from a life of reactive survival to one of intentional creation.
In your own life, or maybe in stories you've encountered, what does that first step out of a dark abyss look like? What profound shifts in perspective or action are required to begin that challenging yet ultimately liberating journey of rebuilding? It's something to really ponder.
It truly is.
That contrast between the overwhelming despair of the dark abyss and the nascent hope implied by the beginning of a journey of rebuilding, it's striking, deeply moving. It reminds us that even in the deepest despair, there can be a seed of resilience waiting to sprout.
A quiet, stubborn determination to forge a new path.
It's not an easy journey, of course not, but the very decision to begin is an act of profound courage, profound self-affirmation.
A testament to the enduring human spirit.
Vanina's story really is a profound testament to the immense pressures that can shape a life, those deeply ingrained lessons we absorb from family, from culture.
And the profound courage it takes to not only endure through unimaginable hardship,
but to eventually break free from destructive patterns and begin anew, building a life rooted in authenticity, in self-worth.
It's a story of the quiet heroism found in reclaiming oneself.
Well, what an incredibly powerful and, yes, moving deep dive into Vanina Vergara's journey. We've seen how these deeply ingrained beliefs about love, sacrifice, the duty of a woman reinforced by family, by culture, how they can shape a life from adolescence right into adulthood,
leading to profound personal cost.
And an eventual, maybe unavoidable, collapse.
Her story is such a poignant reminder of the immense, often invisible price of holding everything together in silence.
It serves as a stark illustration of how societal and familial scripts can dictate our lives, often to our detriment.
Until we bravely choose to rewrite them.
So what are the key takeaways from this, looking at the bigger picture?
Well, zooming out, Vanina's narrative illuminates the crucial importance of challenging those inherited definitions of love and duty. It highlights the absolute necessity of recognizing the subtle and sometimes overt forms of violence and manipulation, and the vital need for self-love, boundaries, and mental health awareness as non-negotiable foundations for a healthy life.
They're not luxuries.
Not at all. They're essentials. Her story underscores that societal judgment often obscures deeper truths, and that true strength lies not in endless, silent endurance, but in the courage to acknowledge breakdown and ultimately to rebuild authentically.
On a foundation of self-worth and genuine well-being.
Yes. It's a powerful call, really, to examine the narratives that define our own lives and to seek liberation from those that diminish us.
So what does this all mean for you, listening, as you reflect on Vanina's deeply personal yet somehow universal story? Maybe consider this. What are the unspoken rules you've inherited about love, about sacrifice, about strength, and what might be the true, often hidden cost of adhering to them in silence? What does rebuilding look like for you in your own context? If you were to truly prioritize your own sanity, your own self, and forge a path of authentic well-being, just something to think about.
Powerful questions.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and Vanina adds a final note. I read letters sent to mailto.verbernavanina@yahoo.com.